This is kind of, I think, in our age, the challenge that we have participating in systems that we think we're not participating in because maybe intellectually we're not, but somehow still playing the game. Yeah, I could go a few directions with that. Well, one thing very quickly, this takes me off parables for a second, but churches are kind of like this, and I've talked about this before, but where the people on the stage don't necessarily really believe any of it. The minister has the doubts, the band have the doubts. And I'm not talking about the traditionalists, they don't believe any of it. I'm talking about evangelicals, right? These mega churches, the secret is, I know, they hire the bands and stuff, right? But they come in and they play the game like they believe. And then the congregation, lots of those people have doubts and questions, but they all, hands up, for Jesus, all for Jesus. When it's not all for Jesus, it's also like, I want a cappuccino from Starbucks, I don't know. But we play this game, and because we all participate in it, even though none of us necessarily believe in it, it still continues to function. And so the challenge, this is the challenge for protest groups, if we get it, is to expose that. Because in every system, there is what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. So every ideology has what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. But it has a third thing. And what's that? Every ideology has the acceptably unacceptable. And this is always the key for change, the acceptably unacceptable. Take, we call it public school, but I think it'd be private school in America. These very upper class, rich schools in the UK. What's the acceptable in those types of school? Well, to be sober, to be upright, to do the right thing, to care for your society, to not look down on other people, right? What's the unacceptable? Drunkenness, sexism, all of that, like just going out and not caring, breaking things, not taking responsibility for your actions. But what's the acceptable, unacceptable? Well, you've got secret societies where you can do all of that. You can get drunk, you can look down on people, you can do all of these crazy things. And what's interesting is the system doesn't just have the acceptably unacceptable. If you want to get anywhere, you have to engage in the acceptably unacceptable. If you want to meet the next CEOs of the bank, if you want to be the next prime minister or know the next prime minister, you want to be in the secret society. If you're not in the secret society, you're going to be frowned upon. So you have the acceptable and the unacceptable and the acceptably unacceptable. In some churches, the acceptable is belief, not having doubts, not questioning. The unacceptable is doubting, questioning, not believing in God or resurrection or whatever. What's the acceptable, unacceptable? Well, you can do all of that, just don't talk about it, right? Behind closed doors, and quietly we can talk, we can have a laugh over a pint and say all the questions we have. Just don't ever bring it to the surface. And in fact, if you're the naive believer who actually believes it all, you're not going to get very far in the church. Why? Because you're the last person anybody wants in the meeting, because you're going to be the one who's going to want to pray all the time. And you're going to be a nightmare. You're going to be wanting to go out in the streets and the evangelism, whatever it is. It's horrible, right? To keep them at a distance, you kind of pat them on the head, but they're always the ones you keep at bay. You see this Zizek philosopher here I like, but he talks about it in terms of in America in the 1950s in small town, you had like on the surface what's acceptable is the law, be law-abiding, be kind, be all of these things, and the unacceptable is violence and hatred and all of these. But then there was the acceptably unacceptable, and it was these secret societies of racist societies, Ku Klux Klan. And what was the crazy thing? The people who were the respectable ones at night were either part of that or endorsed it. So to be acceptable was to embrace the acceptably unacceptable. And what protesters do is they kind of bring to the surface the acceptably unacceptable. They bring to the surface these antagonisms and create change and transformation.